what I'm doing is I'm making a small pattern, and I realized that I needed to have a 2-scale model. 6-inch Spider-Man. There we go. My biggest thing is that I don't like not being able to see out of it when I'm in it. Spidey has his little hammock, and it's red, so it matches his outfit. Here we are on a nice, balmy Pacific Northwest sunny day. Well, I have some breaking news. Last night while I was sleeping, I actually thought about some modifications that I want to make to the patterns that I currently have. So you know how I was going to cut out the little spot where the foot box goes? I decided not to cut it. I'm going to roll it instead, because I don't like the idea of having, you know, this one spot where it goes like this, because that's going to create a weak point. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to roll it, see what happens there. And then I also thought about, you know, the way that I'm curving the head and the foot. I think I'm curving it a little bit too much, so I'm going to pull that back a little bit. And then I was also going to go ahead and make it out of canvas, but I think I'm just going to go for it and make it out of the ripstop. It's not really that expensive, and if I screw it up, I'll just make a bunch of, you know, ditty bags and things like that out of it. So I figured, you know, let's just go for it. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go back inside and start working. Okay, so here's our pattern so far. We have this first one here, which was your standard, you know, rectangle, 10 by 6. And then we had number 2, which we started to curve the inside line there. And I tried curving the end of it here for the head. Okay, then we had number 3, which was basically the same as number 2, except for I extended the end here out a little bit further before I did the little curvy bit here. And this was the first one where we tried to do a foot box in it. Number 4 is basically the same as number 3, except I went ahead and I cut out where I was going to do the foot box. Okay. Alright, and then number 5 here was the actual mock-up for Spidey, and I went ahead and sewed everything. But again, you know, I have some little minor things that I think I'm going to still change. And now a word from our sponsor. If you're having trouble getting through the day, I suggest you try Diet Mountain Dew. It'll get you through. Okay, so before I get started, I wanted to actually show you guys this table here. It's pretty neat. It's actually just some particle board that I wrapped some muslin fabric around it. And actually, before I made this table, I went to Home Depot and I got these 2 feet long by 4 feet tall particle board pieces that you can get. And then they just sell them right at Home Depot, just that size, cut to that size and everything. And then I got some muslin and I basically just wrapped the board. You can see here, you just wrap it and then staple it on there. And the nice thing about these is that, you know, if you don't have a table, you can just, you know, like I said, I made 3 of these. What you do is you put them on your, you know, your dining room table or your kitchen table or whatever. You just lay them down, and that'll serve as your surface for cutting out your fabric. Why do I use a muslin covered tabletop, you ask? Well, that is a good question. One of the reasons that I use a muslin cover tabletop is because what it does is when I'm playing with this fabric, especially with this stuff, because it's so darn slippery, nylon is really slippery. When you're cutting out fabric, the muslin sort of acts like a little bit of a grippy table, and that's a technical term. So what it does is when you lay out your fabric and you smooth it down, it'll really stick to the muslin, and it makes it much easier to cut fabric and whatnot. So if you're going to be doing a lot of projects, I highly recommend, even if you just get one of them, just do one 2x4 tabletop thing with some muslin cut around it. I recommend that you do 2 layers of muslin, 2 or 3, depending on. You'll kind of get a feel for it. It feels really good. And or you can do like I did. I before I built this table, I had 3 of them, and I just laid them out on my dining room table. Highly recommend it. It'll make your life much nicer. Okay, so here I have my fabric. Again, this is a 1.9 ounce nylon ripstop. It's uncoated, and I got that specifically for my hammock because I want my hammock to breathe. Because, you know, when you get inside all of your insulation, you're going to be kind of, you know, getting a little bit sweaty, and you want your fabric to be able to breathe, especially in the summertime. One of the things I'm going to start out doing is I'm just going to lay it out, And then I'm going to start smoothing out the fabric and getting all of the wrinkles out of it, right? I'm going to line it all up nice, okay? And like I said, the muslin is great because it'll help the fabric really stick. So as I keep smoothing out, it kind of will stretch a little bit and get all the wrinkles out, and it'll be great. Now one of the things you're going to notice is over here on this side, I'm actually going to, I've folded the fabric over. And I'm going to cut my fabric on the fold. And so that way what that does is it makes both sides of my hammock even because I'm cutting it out exactly the same. Now another thing that I'm doing is I'm also cutting it on the fold this way, lengthwise. You know, if I was doing a garment or something like that, I wouldn't be able to do that. But because this is basically, in essence, a big, huge rectangle, right, I'm going to cut it on the fold widthwise, and then I'm also going to cut it on the fold lengthwise. So 2 folds there, and again, it'll make everything line up all nice and neat when I get done. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Okay, and I got my little measuring tape here, and I'm going to measure down. So I want my hammock to be roughly 10 feet long. So I'm going to measure down here. So I went ahead and did 70 inches long, so that when you put it all together you end up with 140 inches. So 70 inches long, but it's folded over, so it's actually going to be 140 inches long. Now, you really want to take your time with this step. Make sure everything is all lined up. The nice thing about ripstop is that it's got all these little teeny lines in it. So you see how it's got all these little lines in it? So it's almost like it's all a grid for you. So it makes it really simple to lay everything out. Okay, I wanted to show you another thing here. One thing you'll notice here is, so I've got a couple lines here. This is actually the line that I'm going to cut on. This is the head and also the foot of my hammock because I've got it folded over. Now the reason I have the line here is you want to be really careful. Look at your fabric once you get everything lined up. So see how this overlaps here? So I want to make sure that I'm actually starting out cutting all 4 pieces here. So you want to make sure you go back, because you know also when you go to fabric stores, one of the things that people do is they'll cut out a swatch, and they might cut it out way up here. So you really want to inspect, you know, your whole thing and make sure you don't have any huge gouges, and make sure that when you cut out the whole way through that you're going to be hitting fabric and you're not going to have one spot that goes in like that. So just double check it, and that's all. Okay, so here I am at the end. I've gone ahead and I've actually made marks all along here to show me where I'm going to cut. And now what I'm doing is I'm figuring out, okay, you know, I want to have the end kind of taper and then kind of combine in. And so I was going to do 3 inches, but I've decided that's probably too much. I'm going to go back to 1.5 inches. And then I'll probably blend it back to, just eyeball it here, maybe I'll go back to about there. So I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler and make a mark here. Okay, and that's going to be, and then I don't want this to be like such a drastic line, so I'm actually going to kind of blend it a little bit just to get it to flow in there, like that. And then once you have all that figured out, we're going to go ahead and start cutting. Okay, and when I get here, what I can do is, since I know this is a really straight cut, I can actually go like that if I wanted to. I think I'm just going to cut it though, because there's four layers here, and I want to make sure I make it really nice. Get it all cut nice. Okay, we've got our cut, so now we're fully committed. Okay, I'm going to save this little leftover piece for the bag that it goes in. On the fold, and that's a technical term.